Good afternoon, evening, or morning, whenever you find your way to listening or watching this. The Northeast Bull Rush is back. I'm Omar, as always, joined by my co-host John of the Big Northeast Pod. John, how's everything going?
Pretty good, man. We're just talking college basketball's in full swing. We got obviously college football coming down to the home stretch here, and some real conference races going on. So this is my favorite time of the year for sports wise. So I can't be happier.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree. I've never been a huge college basketball guy. I'm going to try to get into it more this year, but huge opening night with a bunch of upsets as we were talking about beforehand. And of course, you got to love the bowls. Bowl season heating up and projections heating up as well. Which I mean, of course, is what this pod is for. So I guess let's get right into it. The biggest college football news, I guess, arguably of the weekend, and I mean, and I guess an underrated storyline was Phil Jerkovic's return, and I guess BC's return. I remember you messaging me during the game that reports of BC's demise were greatly exaggerated,
Yeah.
quoting Shane Battier. So in these final three games, these final three games, what do you think BC's ceiling is? I mean, honestly, I think that they can even beat Wake Forest. That's just my opinion, but I want to hear yours on where this BC team, I guess, stands for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think the most likely scenario is 2-3 with that loss to Wake Forest, wins over Georgia Tech and Florida State. Jerkovic came back. His stat line didn't look great, but I mean, obviously, he's shaking off a lot of rust. What do you have? He went 7 for 13, so only threw the ball 13 times, 112 yards, one interception. Actually had a lot more rushing yardage than I would have expected. 9 carries, 65 yards, and a touchdown. So I guess he can't be that hurt. If he's able to get back to form, I think they have a really good shot against Wake. I still think Wake probably wins that game, but never say never. I think even if he doesn't get all the way back to form, BC's probably favored over both Florida State and Georgia Tech. So, that puts him in a pretty good spot.
I agree. It's interesting. You mentioned Georgia Tech for this weekend. Georgia Tech right now is a 2-point favorite. I'm not sure if they're giving the Bobby Dodd a home edge right now. Kind of a funny line, but yeah, I think if anything, it was more the weather than I think rust on Jacobic's part versus stat line because Virginia Tech's quarterback struggled as well throwing the ball. But I think this offense is even more dynamic, obviously, not just because of Dracovic, but I mean, Pat Garwo, who on the broadcast, they said that he was pretty much an unknown commodity, excuse me, before Dracovic got hurt, and they had to lean on him like BC teams of past felt like the Steve Adazio era again, where it's just hand the ball off and see what happens. But with that balance, it's great, and it's great for them. And honestly, I think Wake Forest is kind of vulnerable, really, too, with what we saw in defense the past two games, whether it be Army or North Carolina. So we'll see then too. But I think a nice 2 out of 3 to end the year would be great for them. Um, what do you think this does for their bowl destination? Do you think it improves it, or do you think BC is sort of destined for whether it be the Pinstripe or the Fenway Bowl?
That's a good question. I could see them going 2-3 and still going to the Pinstripe or Fenway. They go 3-3. I think that probably bumps them up a little bit. But yeah, if it's 2-3, depends on how everything else shakes out. But I think Fenway or Pinstripe is pretty likely for them. And honestly, I think I'd rather see them in the Pinstripe, just get a little bit of a change of scenery and go up against a Big Ten opponent.
For sure. I do agree. I agree with that. Even though I think there is a bit of a possibility that, I mean, it improves their standing for the ACC sort of out of market bowl, with bowls like this year being the Sun Bowl. I mean, I guess every year for the Sun Bowl, and this year being the Holiday Bowl. But I can also see a team like Clemson grabbing up those spots this year. But yeah, I mean, I agree that they are pretty destined for the Pinstripe Bowl, which I guess as redundant as it may seem, maybe we're destined for a Boston College Penn State rematch like the 2014 game. But I guess I mean money talks honestly in those situations. So I mean, would I have a problem with it? I guess not as much. But I guess moving on to our next topic, looking at some projections, ESPN seems pretty hard set on Maryland going to the Guaranteed Rate Bowl out at Chase Field. And interestingly enough, one of their opponents in those projections is Texas, which is an interesting thing to note because for the Big 12 selection order, they have a more structured order where, I mean, it's not really a pool, but it's just every bowl selects after one another, like without any shifting in it. So the Guaranteed Rate Bowl has the sixth pick of Big 12 teams, counting the New Year's Six. So it goes Sugar, Alamo Bowl, Cheez-It, Texas, Liberty, and Guaranteed Rate, which leads me to believe that if Texas is bowl eligible, that none of those bowls would pass up on selecting the Longhorns. As it stands right now, who do you see being Maryland's opponent in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl if they indeed get sent to Chase Field?
I've seen some projections with Kansas State. I've seen some projections, yeah, with Texas, maybe and even a Wazoo as a kind of a wild card opponent coming in there. So your guess is as good as mine on that. I don't know a ton about any of those teams. I know a little bit more about Texas than the rest, but it's yeah, kind of an interesting race out there in the Big 12. We'll see. It doesn't seem like Oklahoma or Oklahoma State is going to get into the college football playoff. So more than likely that kind of bumps everyone down, a rung. But yeah, who knows what's going to happen towards the end of the year if Oklahoma's sitting there as one of the only undefeateds. Maybe they get just kind of slotted in by default.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I don't know. I guess the more we continue to ride out Oklahoma, the more it motivates them, and they continue to win. Which I mean, I totally see them going like 12-0 too as well. I mean, Oklahoma State, they're not really a November team. Baylor, same thing too. I mean, it seems like Oklahoma has Baylor's number, especially if you consider 2019 with that Baylor team blowing the 28-3 lead. So honestly, I feel like a OU playoff appearance is in the cards and kind of destined this moment, especially with Oregon looking kind of shaky at times. But I guess going back to the bowl situation with the guaranteed rate, something interesting to note is if the Big 12 does not have enough bowl eligible teams for that game, then the Mountain West would send one of their top teams, which in that case, it would be interesting because I think. While I think that San Diego State would be a good pick for that one, I think the Los Angeles Bowl would grab them up for a USC or I mean, shoot, I want to say USC for that one, but I don't know if they'll be bowl eligible. But granted, the Los Angeles Bowl for I guess geographic proximity for that one. But next up on my selection list would probably be Air Force, even though they had went to that bowl game in 2019. Talk about a contrast of styles with Maryland's spread and Air Force's triple option, and I guess another odd quirk that would be I'm going to call it a half. I'm going to call 2020 a half season. In the past 2.5 seasons, that would be Air Force's third game at an MLB ballpark, with counting last week's Commanders Classic game at the new Globe Life Park for the home of the Rangers, which we'll talk about a little bit more next. But yeah, any thoughts, I guess, on that side of things with the Mountain West, like how Maryland would match up excuse me, about how Maryland would match up with these Mountain West teams?
I think it would just be, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my bias, but I love seeing East Coast West Coast battle going on. Little harken back to the old East Coast West Coast hip hop days. So I would love it. I know Air Force isn't exactly on the West Coast, but they're in the Mountain West, so we'll count it. To me, anytime I can get a service academy, running a triple option in a bowl game, particularly against an East Coast team. I don't know why. Maybe it's just a weird quirk of mine, but I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, shoot. I guess you're in the minority in terms of triple option because like whenever the coaching rumors come out and someone mentions like Kenny Matalolo or literally any option coordinator, people lose their stuff and I just don't get it. Like, is winning not attractive no matter what the style is? But anyway, that's a different topic for me to vent on. I mean, I'm glad they're like that because that means that Jeff Monken's gonna stay at Army forever, hopefully, unless Kansas has another change of heart and actually hires Coach Monken. That was a huge scare this past year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd be in agreement probably with most of the fans. Is like I wouldn't want Penn State or a team that I was rooting for to start running the triple option unless they kind of had to out of necessity. But I love watching it. I love, especially watching it when it's not against my team, and we don't have, 260-pound offensive linemen, running around taking people's knees out and things like that. So,
Well, I mean, I agree on that front because because it's Penn State, though there will never be a situation where like they have to run the option. But if you're like a UMass or a UConn, where like that's
yeah,
kind of like the last resort, and you're at that point, and like as a program to do that, why not? Like I mean, why the resistance? I mean,
for sure.
anything to win, right?
For sure. I'm in support of like diversity of play style across the board. As many different, types of play style that we can get, the more fun the game becomes. And in pretty much every sport, when everything just looks cookie cutter to me, it's like, it's still fun. Like I still enjoy the sport, but if we can get option teams in there, we can get spread teams going. If started hearing about I think it was a couple of basketball teams. I think it was Bellarmine. That's like they basically try not to dribble; they just try to pass instead. Wazoo now, actually, their basketball team is running like basically a money ball type of a situation out there, trying to capitalize on that. So anytime you can get stuff like that going, I'm all for it. I'll devour any content I can find on like obscure play styles and strategies.
I mean, now I'm interested. I guess into Bellarmine, but I kind of wish it was any other school with Bellarmine because they beat Army in the shoot. Which one was it? Was it the CIT or the CBI? Whichever third tier postseason basketball tournament happened, because one of them got canceled. So yeah, Bellarmine beat Army in the first round. So I mean, it's kind of a sore spot. But I guess if that worked for them in that tournament, and it works for them in the A Sun. Especially with the ASUN getting weaker with Liberty leaving, then I mean I'm all for diversity to play, of course, like even in college basketball. So yeah, I guess moving on to our final topic, I guess kind of teased it, try to make some smooth transitions. But Army had a huge win at the Rangers ballpark, in the Commanders Classic over Air Force, which means the CIC is staying at West Point no matter what happens against Navy in the I don't want to jinx it in the unlikely circumstance that we lose to Navy and their anemic option this year. I think their quarterback Ty Lavatai is averaging 2 yards a carry and over 100. I was gonna make a joke saying that he was probably the toughest quarterback in the country. Averaging 2 yards per carry on an option offense. Like you have to be tough. But
Right.
but yeah, so it seems like their opponents, I guess, might have been upgraded after this win. Like if you look at the change from week 9 to 10, and my good friend James from Brigade Review tracks every week. Week 9, you had opponents ranging from Texas Tech to Washington, UAB and UTEP were some of the notable ones, and also Wyoming and Western Michigan on the lower level. After this week, you had the Arizona Bowl with Fresno State, which is kind of interesting because I'm not sure where Army would fit in that one, with that one being a MAC versus Mountain West game. Texas Tech, Western Kentucky, and Middle Tennessee, which I absolutely don't want as an Army fan. It's kind of not attractive to me, not appealing. San Jose State in the first responder, and then Coastal Carolina even in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. So, do you think this win against Air Force, being a marquee program in the Mountain West, helped Army's bowl, I guess, bowl outlook opponent wise, or do you think it just won't matter in the end?
No, absolutely, I do. I mean, they were one of the tougher teams on the schedule. Certainly of the remaining schedule when we were talking about this last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. And I want to point out, by the way, I had called this. I was very confident in Army winning against Air Force. They didn't win. I thought it was going to be more of a high scoring affair. They didn't win in the manner that I thought they were going to win, but I'll take it. So yeah, I absolutely think this is going to boost their bowl projection. I think they probably went out aside from that Liberty game, which Liberty's going to be favored, but I think Army's got a shot in that one too. So yeah, I think my preferred matchup for Army would be probably that Myrtle Beach Bowl with Coastal Carolina. We get the mullets versus the high and tights. We could do a lot of memes about that. Yeah, I think. I don't know exactly where Army's going to fall in terms of bowl projection, but say we have them winning out aside from the Liberty game. What does that put them at? 8-4? Do I have that right?
8-4. Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, that's about, kind of what we were thinking, at least what I was thinking. I can't remember where you fell in that camp. So, where the bowl projection ends up, yeah, whether it be against Western Kentucky, whether it be Coastal Carolina, Washington, whoever, I think those are all pretty good draws for Army.
Yeah. I agree, and I want to note that yeah, you were the confident one, surprisingly. And I mean, not me after what happened with Wake Forest 2 weeks ago. I think that is even a bigger statement for Sam Hartman's Heisman case, for him to be able to drop 70 on Army, and then the next week Army turns around and allows only 14 to Air Force in overtime. Um, so that's my little soapbox there. So I think I guess I would like Coastal Carolina. I mean, I would like that one. I do agree with the 8-4 because the back end of Army schedule is kind of almost laughably soft. They have Bucknell and they have UMass, and I guess I'll let you in on like a little thing with Navy Twitter. I mean, there's some Navy Twitter folks that were when the American was at its peak. I mean, it still is, I guess, as a conference, but they would argue that Navy plays influential football in November, which I mean they're not wrong. While Army plays Colgate and Lafayette. I think that happened my sophomore year there, where they played Colgate and Lafayette in back-to-back weeks, while Navy was I mean that was it, that was Navy's 3-10 year, but Navy was playing, I mean, American Conference schools. And as a fan, you're like, dang, I don't want to play Colgate and Lafayette in November. I mean, in the peak of the season. But I digress with that. Um, I guess in terms of opponent, I don't know if they plays Army against Coastal Carolina in Myrtle Beach, which I mean I would love to see that. And you mentioned Mullets versus High and Tight, so I had to show my own High and Tight too. I guess take off my hat for that as a joke. But I think ESPN owning the many bowls that they do will find a way to pair Coastal with like a UTSA or like some middling school out of the American, whether it be like Memphis, which in terms of Memphis, I think Army might have played themselves into playing a team from the American, whether it be Memphis or East Carolina, because I think they match up well with those schools. I'll have to check the Sagarin ratings, but East Carolina should roll in at like 6-6 out of the American. Memphis maybe like 7-5. I'll have to check theirs, but they just had a huge win against SMU. Kind of a down year for them. Um, I mean, they're not like in the New Year's Six ranks like they usually are. So why not place them against the Service Academy? Why not use this game as a measuring stick game for Army? So that's ideal for me. I do think a power conference team is out of the equation. It might not be, given that the Armed Forces Bowl, how much they love Army, but as an Army fan, the Armed Forces Bowl gets kind of old. So I bet they look elsewhere with that one. But I mean, I'm in general agreement with you that this win helped their bowl prospects. But my ultimate prediction is we get an American team as an opponent sitting at 8-4 with especially with how top heavy the American is. Shoot, I mentioned Memphis. I would love the UCF, honestly. With UCF being the biggest brand in the yeah, I guess arguably the biggest brand in the AAC, and it'd be nice to beat the 2017 national champions if given the chance. So yeah.
For sure, man. I like a lot of those options. But one thing I will add for your Navy Twitter beefs is that, I mean, you got to be looking real nice now that the American is jettisoning their top teams, because like, all right, if they're going to give you crap for playing Colgate and Bucknell in November, it won't be too long before they're playing who is it, Rice and North Texas and whoever else. Like, at that rate, as a Northeast guy, I'd rather be playing Bucknell and Colgate.
I mean, I love the history of those games. I absolutely love the history, and I will note it's not exactly a beef, just difference of opinions in a scheduling philosophy and everything. And shoot, you mentioned Rice. Like I do love our academic peers. I love those series whenever Navy plays Rice or Tulane. Love when we play Tulane. So I mean, but yeah, I guess Charlotte, FAU. I mean, and even then, like that's the same guy that I referenced, James from Brigade Review. He mentioned that with the AAC, with the American going to 14 teams, it's probably likely, or I mean, it's in their interest to go to 9 conference games, and that means that Navy has literally no scheduling freedom because they have the yearly series with Notre Dame, they have the Air Force game, they have Army. So with the 9 conference games and the Academy games and Notre Dame, there's just no scheduling freedom, and things could get pretty old pretty quick for Navy fans. Which I mean, I hope it's not the case. I mean, I'm all for scheduling freedom, but it is a possibility for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I keep saying, I want to get us like a Northeast independent football conference that we can get. I don't know if Army would ever have any interest in joining, but if that American conference breaks up, or Navy and Temple get fed up, we already have UConn, Army, and UMass independent up here. That's a lot of scheduling to go around right there. I mean, add a couple more teams. Maybe not a conference, but like an independent scheduling alliance. Wouldn't be the worst thing ever.
I mean, I agree. And I guess as we close, sort of bring basketball into this, like, do you think Temple would benefit from that? I know the money's in the American, but I've heard John Rothstein talk about Temple just belonging in the A10, them being out of place in the American, especially now, which definitely does not look like a basketball conference. I mean, at the moment, it looks like maybe a 2 bid in some years, but I mean, this league's looking like a 1 bid league, I think, for going forward after all the change. Do you think Temple would I guess fit in some independent alliance and then going back to the A10 and being with I guess their peers in college basketball?
I mean, I just don't think the money makes sense for that. I would like to see it personally, but I think the A10 is paying out like 300 grand per year. Even if Temple goes independent in football, gets some buy games, they get a couple million from that. Maybe a little bit from whatever sort of TV deal they can get. So they're staring at maybe 3 million all in, whereas they're making 7 from the American right now. Even if that goes down, a little bit, they're still coming out ahead by several million. I just don't think it makes sense unless and until that either goes down significantly or the American breaks up even further, which I'm sure is going to happen with Memphis and maybe SMU. Who knows what else is going to happen? But I don't see the Americans staying together for very much longer. So I think Temple is going to have to leave sooner or later. Right now, do they want to just keep collecting that check? I mean, if the A10 isn't going anywhere, then why not just keep collecting the check and wait until the money dries up? But if the A10 says, "Hey, either come now or never," then I'd probably make the move if I were Temple.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the A10 looks like one of the more stable conferences. I can't remember when the last time they were poached, aside from the start of the new Big East, and I don't even know if they were poached that much, aside from I guess Butler. I mean, but that was a very temporary thing. So yeah, no, I agree with that. I just wanted your take on that with the whole Northeast, the whole I guess the whole dream of a Northeastern Conference returning. I guess I call it the yeoman farmer's dream because it's something that is like Jefferson's dream of the yeoman farmer. And I'm getting into my U.S. history background with Jefferson's dream of the yeoman farmer. It's something that time passed by very quickly. Same thing with the Eastern Conference. It seems like there's no need for it, but it just harkens to days past, which I'm all for.
I agree, man. Maybe one day. Maybe one day we'll get that yeoman farmer going.
Maybe one day. And I guess with that note, with that a very nerdy history note, I guess we'll say see you later till next time. And soon enough, I guess we'll be reviewing these bowl selections rather than projections. But until then, we'll just keep throwing darts. And as always, I'm Omar for Northeast Bowl Rush, joined with John. And anything final to say before we sign off?
No, sir. I'll let you have the last word.
All right, cool. I mean, I got nothing else. So until next time, peace, love, and soul.